Most people look at a hole in the ground and see danger, but you see an opportunity. You've heard the legends of the Thoralian caves. You've heard about the boon, the wish, the insight, the one answer to a question you've been too afraid to ask. It's all down there, waiting in the silence of the black. But let's be honest, the Wanderer doesn't hand out miracles for free. Every step you take past the fourth marker is a bet, and in this game, the house always has the advantage. I've completed the walk 6 times. I've felt the cold hand. I've heard the footsteps that weren't mine. I've lost friends to the shadows who thought they could outsmart the void. My name is Skelepsis, and tonight, I am your dealer. I'm going to give you the only thing that might keep you from becoming a permanent resident of these tunnels. 11 rules, not suggestions, not optional guidelines, rules. Ignore one, and the game is over. So, take a seat, keep your eyes on the ground, and listen very carefully. Place your bets.
I am going to preface this by saying that I'm not going to flash my credentials to brag, but I've completed the Thoralian cave walk 6 times now. I've done this enough times and done enough research with my friends that we've gotten as close as we could to something that resembles a system whenever we go in there. A lot of people ask me why me and my friends would do something as willingly stupid as entering the caves, and the answer is simple. There's an old legend among the locals that if you complete the walk enough times and make it out alive, you get a boon. It could be a wish, an insight, an answer to a question, anything really that's within reason. No bringing people back to life here. And that's thanks to the entity in the caves called the Wanderer. Nobody knows for sure how it got there, and nobody knows the exact number of times they need to do the walk to be given the boon. But to the thrill seekers, that's part of the fun. Based on my research on the folklore and the locals that have survived, the number 9 comes up a lot. No one has ever reached 9, and that's also because of the Wanderer. Ironic. Now, before we go further, it's a fact that the Wanderer is an entity that has been proven to possess habits and characteristics that make it seem predictable. And that's just how a lot of these games and rituals gain a footing. But it's far from harmless. There's always a risk that it will do something the rules can't protect you from. Because the simple truth is that the legend has been around for God knows how long before people settled in that area, and they've learned not to go near it. But we've carefully crafted this list of rules based on thousands of years of folklore, historical documents, and survivor accounts surrounding the caves and the thing that lives in them. I sound like I'm contradicting myself, but I'm trying to make a point. The rules are not a guarantee of survival. They're just the best chance you have based on what we've figured out. We lost 2 friends to that cave system. One of them understood the Wanderer and the rules better than anyone. His name was Kimber. He was 23. I was eventually going to ask him to be my best man. The other friend we lost was Donovan. He was 21 years old. And he thought he knew what he was doing because he read the same threads you probably have, the beginner-friendly guides that were written by people who got lucky once on their first attempt at the walk and decided that made them an expert. I'm telling you right now not to listen to those threads. They always get at least 2 rules abysmally wrong, and they treat 3 of them as if they're optional. They're not. And it's gotten people killed, including those experts. They thought they understood what was in those caves, and they thought they could exploit its last remnants of sanity to create some kind of game. I'm not saying they deserved what happened to them, no one does, but I wasn't surprised to figure out that the thing that lives in the Thoralian caves proved them wrong.
Why do you think they haven't responded to the comments and requests for more info in almost 8 months or more? If you want my 2 cents, my guess is because they tried the cave walk again with the same illusion of security they gave to people like Donovan, with their phones in one hand, screen glowing with the list of rules, and the other holding a flashlight. They walked in there like they had it all figured out. And they never came back. So I'm going to do my best to make the number of disappearances lessen as much as I can by making sure everyone has the best chances of surviving the Wanderer. And make sure that if you know someone who is seriously considering going on the walk, you send them this list immediately. As a reminder, it doesn't work if you stand 5 feet deep in the cave and hop back out in a minute. That's just the area the tourists go to. After the 4th marker, you're subjected to the rules. So, here it is, my 11 rules for surviving the Thoralian cave walk. Rule 1. The night is not your friend. The daylight is. You'd be surprised how many people think going into this particular cave system at night is a good idea. Don't add your name to that obituary, trust me. Your best option is to go in during the morning. Early morning if you can manage it. You want the entrance light there for as long as possible to guide your way out on the home stretch. Rule 2. Go in alone. 2 or more is easier to find. I know how this sounds, but safety in numbers doesn't exist in those caves. The more people there are with you, the more noise you make. More noise means you're more noticeable, and the more curious it'll be. So here it is, my 11 rules for surviving the Thoralian cave walk. Rule 3. Bring at least 2 lanterns, never 1. If you don't have any old lanterns with flame wicks, then electric ones from your local outdoor store will do fine. Just make sure they're not on the brighter settings. This is one of those rules that isn't optional. Do not bring a flashlight. The Wanderer doesn't like those. Rule 4. If your light goes out, stop walking immediately and relight it. Don't take 1 step until it's back on. Your lantern will go out at some point, every single time. The key here is not to panic and not to make any sudden movements. Rule 5. If the temperature drops and your light dims, it's there with you. This is your first and possibly only warning, and I need to be clear. Not nearby, not in an adjacent tunnel. It's there, in the same tunnel as you. The other guides treat this like a yellow light, but it's not. It's a solid red one. And what you do in those next few seconds will matter. Rule 6. If you hear footsteps that aren't yours, get your back against the wall and your eyes on the ground. Do not look at it. I don't care how tempting it is. Don't look up. Don't look for it. The light will be so dimmed it likely won't matter anyway, but don't risk it. Sarah tried looking once, and she only told me snippets. Just a pale thing almost like a face in the black, but a face that had something over it. Sarah still turns 1 light on when she sleeps.
Rule 7. If the footsteps stop and the cold doesn't leave, don't speak. Not even to yourself, not even quietly. Don't announce yourself like the other guides say. Sarah's theory is that the Wanderer responds to voices in a way it doesn't respond to movement or light. Nobody is entirely sure why, though. Whatever the reason, silence is non-negotiable here. If you have a cough, suppress it. If you need to cry, do it quietly. I had to do both on my 3rd run. Rule 8. If you feel a light cold touch on your shoulder, don't run. I know, every instinct will scream for you to run, but that risks you choosing any possible avenue to try to escape. That's a great way to get lost.
and the Wanderer has been walking every chamber and tunnel in that cave system since before our grandparents' grandparents were even born. It'll find you eventually. I'm willing to bet that's what happened to Donovan. He was always a jittery guy. Your best shot is to squat on the floor and hug your knees with your arms and make yourself as small as possible. It might lose interest and move on. Rule 9. If you feel a cold hand gently grasp your fingers, don't grip back. If you grip back, it won't let go. But don't just yank your hand away. It doesn't like fast movements. Let your hand go completely limp and wait for it to let go. Rule 10. At some point, you will see a dim light further down the tunnel that isn't yours. Follow it slowly. Do not catch up to it. This one confused me the first time it happened, and I nearly made a fatal mistake by stopping entirely. The light isn't a trick, and it isn't a bait. There are moments when whatever is in those caves remembers, however briefly, what it was supposed to be doing before it got lost, before everything went wrong. In those rare moments, it will guide you toward the exit. Follow the light at a respectful distance. Don't rush it, and don't call out to it. Just follow. It won't last long, but it's the safest you'll ever be in the caves. Use it as best you can. And there you have it. I know that I said this list had 11 rules and I only mentioned 10. That's because this last rule is more of a reminder that'll affect how you interact with the Wanderer, and Rule 10 makes a lot more sense because of it. The other guides either ignore it or say it isn't true, and I'll give you one guess what happened to them. Rule 11. It was a person once. Don't forget that. Don't let it forget that either. Me and Sarah have talked about this rule a lot, and it changed everything when we figured it out. It's part of the reason why we've completed it so many times, relatively speaking. This is the rule that gets dismissed the most, because people read the accounts, see the folklore and hear the stories, and they reduce it to a monster, a hazard or something to be navigated around and survived. That's the wrong way to think about it. The people who treat it like a puzzle to be solved are the ones who go in all clinical and come out with their minds in pieces, if they come out at all. Because here's what the folklore makes clear if you actually read it carefully enough. Whatever is in those caves is not hunting you. It is not malicious, and it's not even territorial. It's lost. It has been lost for longer than any of us can comprehend. And somewhere underneath whatever it's become, there is still something that remembers warmth, that remembers walking beside someone, that remembers what it felt like not to be alone in the dark. And sometimes, enough of what it used to be shines through to understand that you don't belong down there, and it will try to guide you out. The touch on your shoulder isn't aggression. The hand reaching for yours isn't a trap it's setting for you. And that almost makes it worse, in my opinion. Should you feel sorry for it? I don't blame you if you do. But I'm for sure not saying let your guard down. I'm saying that if you go in there treating it like a monster, you will act like someone being hunted by one. You'll panic. You'll run. So go in there knowing what it actually is. It's something ancient and broken, and it's been in the dark for so long it's forgotten the way out. It won't understand why you're scared or why you're there. If you make the mistake of breaking Rule 9, it won't understand that you need rest or why you just stop moving after a while. But what I think it does understand is patience. It's patient enough to wait with what's left of you, still and unhurried. And I think it'd wait for quite a while to see if you'll get back up. But eventually, it will move on into the silence of the black, and you'll be forgotten. Later on, I'll share with you a story from my third run that happened a year ago, so you have more than idea on what I'm talking about, but not yet. First, after I write this, I have to meet up with Sarah's classmate from graduate school, Petra. She just took a job as a documenter during the graveyard shift at the caves,
some kind of heritage preservation program. There's a reason why the first rule is don't go into the cave system at night, and her job requires her to break it. So now I have to prepare a different list of rules for her. It's a list I prayed I'd never have to write. Wish us both luck.
I mentioned a few details about the experiences me and Sarah had when we did the Thorelian cave walk in the past, and I told you I'd share a story. At first, I was going to put it off a bit longer, honestly, because writing it down makes the memory a bit more real in a way I don't enjoy. But Sarah texted me and said she was going to check on Petra after her first graveyard shift to see if she was okay. I have time to spare right now, and I did promise you all a story. I'm a man of my word. About a year ago was when Sarah and I arrived at the caves to get me started on my third walk. It was early October, and the time was around 9 a.m. The sun was out, and the air glided through the cool blue sky as we set up camp at the entrance. It was a Sunday, and the cave's outer chambers were usually closed on those days, which meant we had the area to ourselves. After the 3 walks between us, we had enough shared experiences and gone over our rules so many times that the memory of drinking bad coffee at 2 a.m. the night before a walk and debating over notes scrawled in 3 different notebooks feels nostalgic to me now. The list I shared with you in my last post was quite different from the one Sarah and I used a year ago. You'll see the differences soon. We still had a long way to go. Rule 1. Don't enter the caves at night. Rule 2. Bring no more than 1 partner, but don't speak. Use hand signals instead. It doesn't like sound. Rule 3. No flashlights. It doesn't like those. Use a lantern instead. Rule 4. If your lantern goes out, stop and relight it. Rule 5. If you feel cold, it's close. Rule 6. If you hear footsteps, get out of the way. Looking back, this list reminds me of those guides that I've yelled at for getting people killed. And you can understand why I get so upset. It's because back then, I didn't know any better, and we almost didn't make it out. Sarah wasn't supposed to come in with me. That was the original plan. She was going to wait at the entrance like we talked about, and I was going to do the third walk alone. But the night before, she'd had a dream about the caves that she couldn't shake. She wouldn't tell me what it was about, just kept saying she didn't want me going in there without her. I told her we had a rule about that for a reason. She told me Rule 2 said 1 partner was allowed. She wasn't wrong. At the time, we thought we were being reasonable about it. 1 partner, no talking, hand signals only. We thought that was enough of a precaution. It wasn't. The first 2 markers passed without incident, same as my previous walks. The cave at that depth is almost pleasant in a strange way, the kind of quiet that you don't get anywhere else. There's faint light from the entrance still reaching back that far, and you can hear the wind outside if you listen for it. It's the only part of the walk that ever feels safe, and even then you know it isn't really. By the 3rd marker, Sarah tapped my shoulder and pointed at her lantern. It was already dimming. Not out, just dimmer than it should have been. The flame was low and small, and the shadows around us were deeper than they had any right to be given the time of day. I held up my fist and we both stopped walking. We stood there for maybe 30 seconds, the kind of 30 seconds that feels like 10 minutes. Neither of us breathed very loudly. Sarah's hand found my arm and gripped it, and I let her because I wasn't going to be the one to argue with her about it at that particular moment. The flame came back up, slowly, but it was enough. The cold hadn't come yet, and I told myself it was just a draft. We passed the 4th marker. That's when the rules actually start mattering. The Thorelian cave system past the 4th marker is nothing like the shallow chambers near the entrance.
The ceiling gets higher in some places and lower in others. The tunnels branch off in ways that would be easy to get turned around in if you didn't know the path. We knew it well enough by that point, or we thought we did. We were maybe 15 minutes past the fourth marker when the temperature dropped. Not gradually, not the way a cold draft moves through a room. It just dropped. The way a door opens to the outside in January and the cold hits you all at once before you've had time to prepare for it. I stopped walking. Sarah stopped a half step after me. I could see her breath, and I could see my own.
Rule 5. If you feel cold, it's close. That was all the rule said, and at the time, we hadn't figured out yet what close actually meant. We thought it meant somewhere nearby in the way that means it was a few tunnels over. We were wrong about that. The lanterns dimmed at the same time, both of them, down to almost nothing, and in that near dark, I became very aware of the sound of my own heartbeat. It was suddenly the loudest thing I could hear. Sarah's grip on my arm tightened. Then we heard footsteps. Rule 6 said, "Get out of the way." That was it. That was the whole rule. We'd written it down like it was simple and clean and obvious, but we learned that it was neither of those things when you are standing in a tunnel with almost no light and the footsteps coming up behind were going slowly, so slowly, like it had absolutely nowhere to be. It made my stomach churn and drop with dread. We pressed against the wall. That part we had figured out at least. Side by side with our backs flat against the stone, lanterns held low, eyes down. The footsteps got closer. I want to be precise about how close. Our lanterns dimmed to the point where they might as well have been lit matches for all the good they did, and the darkness was just pressing in more. Then the footsteps slowly moved on down the tunnel, so slowly, until they faded into the black, and the temperature began to rise just a bit. Sarah's breathing had gone very quiet beside me. Mine had too. Neither of us moved. The lanterns started to brighten again, and I could see the wall of the tunnel across from us. But the cold was still there. That was my mistake. I let out a slow breath. I had figured the footsteps had stopped, so maybe it passed. Maybe we'd done something right. I started to feel the cautious, stupid beginnings of relief bubble up. I started to grin, and then I coughed. I hadn't felt it coming. There was nothing to feel coming. 1 second, I was standing completely still against that wall, holding my breath, and the next second, it was just there, forcing its way out before I could stop it. One sharp sound in the absolute silence of the tunnel. The cold slammed back into us as the footsteps came back fast and loud from the direction it was going. It was a walk with purpose, and there was a screeching sound along the wall as it went. It was like the top of a sword was streaking over glass. And there was one more sound that made our feet feel like lead. It was a low, hollow intake of air, like a death rattle that only got louder as the wanderer came striding back towards us. Sarah and I were frozen with terror, and we both crouched to the ground, hugging each other close. I think I might have heard her scream. Then the screeching and footsteps stopped again all at once, and both lanterns dimmed down to mere embers. Utter silence and darkness filled the tunnel, and it was standing right in front of us. I heard slow, steady breathing somewhere above us. There wasn't rage or hunger. It was almost restrained, like someone was about to make a decision they regretted. Then the breathing lowered until I felt it on my cheek. The face of the wanderer was right next to our heads. I've done this 6 times now, and I have never felt terror the way I felt it at that moment. Not before or since. I wanted to throw up.
My lips were dry, and as my eyes adjusted to the little trickles of light the embers provided, I fixed my eyes on Sarah's knees where she was crouched next to me. Sarah made a sound beside me, just a small one, the kind of sound that escapes before you can catch it. She had looked up. I didn't look up. I kept my eyes on her knees, and I gripped her arm hard enough that she made a different sound, a quiet, hurt one, and I felt her head drop back down. But she had already seen it. Whatever was standing in that tunnel with us, she had already seen it. She didn't speak, she didn't run. I'll give her that. Whatever she saw, she held herself together well enough to stay against that wall and keep her eyes down and wait. The footsteps didn't move for a long time after that, the breaths slowly turning from one of us to another. The cold stayed, the dark stayed, and I was sitting there with the taste of copper in my mouth, because at some point I had bitten the inside of my cheek hard enough to bleed, and I could feel Sarah shaking against my arm, and at some point I realized that my eyes were wet. I couldn't tell you what I was feeling exactly. It wasn't fear the way fear usually feels. It was more like standing at the edge of something enormous and dark, and understanding in a very fundamental way how small you are by comparison, how completely and absolutely meaningless it was in that cave, in that dark, whether you intended to be there or not. I cried quietly. That was the first time I understood why that had to be on the list. The breathing eventually stopped, and the footsteps started to move on, but not before there was a small sliding sound, like something was being put away.
Slow, still patient, still even steps, moving away from us down the tunnel in the direction we'd come from, not the direction we were heading, and the cold lifted in stages,
The way cold lifts when the source of it moves away, and the lanterns came back up. Sarah and I didn't move for a long time after that. We just stood there with our backs against the wall, still hugging each other, and our lanterns, and our breathing slowly returning to something close to normal. When we finally started walking again, she didn't use hand signals. She just put her hand in mine and held on, and I let her because I wasn't going to argue with her about it. We made it out. That much is obvious, or I wouldn't be writing this. But I want you to know that the list we came home with that night was a very different list from the one we went in with. Rule 7 alone took us 3 hours of conversation and 2 cups of coffee each to come to an agreement on. Sarah's theory about voices came from what she'd seen in those few seconds before I pulled her head back down, and I believed her because I've never had a reason not to. We didn't talk about what she actually saw. She still hasn't told me the full version, just that it had something over its face, and that it had turned toward her when she looked up. The rules you have now are what we built from that night and from everything that came after it. They're better, they're more complete, and they cost us more to learn than I like to think about. Sarah just texted me. Petra's alive, but she needs me to come over right away. I'll update soon.
If you enjoyed this story and would like to hear the continuation, please let me know in the comments and give it a like. That's all for now. I'll see you again on my channel.